One of my favorite books of the whole Bible is the book of Ruth. I think it's arguably the greatest short story ever written in the history of the world. And very early on, we're introduced to a woman who becomes a central figure in the story. Her name is Naomi. She's one of God's people. She lives in the great nation of Israel. And a famine hits. A great economic crisis hits their land. And her husband is a foolish man, and he decides that he will relocate his family. And a move is a big thing, especially in that day when you're leaving God's presence at the temple and you're leaving God's people in Israel. And he takes his wife and their sons and relocates to a pagan land. And there his sons marry godless women. And he dies, and then his sons die, and this woman is left destitute, poor, and absolutely alone. And she has a devastated, difficult life. Her name, Naomi, meant sweet. Her identity was daughter of God, and her life was supposed to be sweet. Things become very dark and difficult for her, and in Ruth chapter 1, verse 20, she makes this statement, "Do not call me Naomi, call me Mara, because my life has become very bitter." She changes her name, and in so doing, she's redefining her identity by her hurt, by her suffering, by her loss. The worst day of her life became the defining day of her life. And in asking others to call her Mara, she was accepting bitterness as her identity and the lens through which she would interpret everything that would happen for the rest of her life, because the name Mara literally means bitter. Bitter. Are you Mara? In your past, have you had a season of Mara? Are there people that you're in relationship with who are Mara? Are there the seeds of discontent in your soul that will eventually cause you to be in a season of Mara, bitterness? This issue is so pernicious in my almost 17 years now of pastoral ministry. This is the issue that I have dealt with most frequently in my own soul and in the soul of others. Early on in our church, I was the only paid pastor on staff until we had about 800 people, which means a lot of the counseling load resided with me. And I found over and over and over and over and over this issue of bitterness versus forgiveness. And the text of Scripture that I have taken people to in counseling appointments more than any other is Ephesians chapter 4, verses 25 through 32. It's where we find ourselves today dealing with this topic of I am forgiven.